Hey.
That was
Yay.
beautimous. I have so many questions, but this is the Q&A part of the whole shebang, and I don't want to be selfish. So we have the ever capable Courtney Wise with us to help us moderate the moderator with the Q&A. So anything that you might want to ask Andy or Sarah, like please drop it into the Q&A below, and Courtney will make sure it gets heard. Was there anything, I mean, I have a bunch of questions, but I want to give you both the opportunity to talk about what just happened now that we listened to the entire record before I hound you. Actually, I mean, I know that, like, I actually want to ask you for, like, first of all, what it was like to perform it, Andy, but then, like, Sarah, what do you like to say, like, after people hear your work for the first time?
I don't know. If no one's heard me before, this is a weird entry point. But, this was one of those things that, like, as I was making it, I just was like, what is wrong with me?
So, yeah, so what is wrong with you?
I don't want to get into that. So many things. But no, there's a lot about this record that is related to what I do. It's just is aesthetically, well, I don't even know if it's aesthetically different. It's just different, but not that different. As far as like the core tenets are concerned. A sort of vitality and intensity of sound, repeating notes, behaving in weird ways, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. And, and Andy, like, sorry, I'm going to cut you off, but Andy, like, what was it? I mean, what would you want somebody that had just heard this for the first time to know?
I don't know if I'd want them to know anything. I'd be really curious how it sat for them. I mean, I have like such visceral reactions to listening to that music and that piece, because like so much of it, okay, so Kiss is the longest piece, and that was the first one that we built together. So much of that is about like basically performing a task that's impossible. Like the score as it's written is designed to it creates failure in a really magical way, and generates failure. And so part of me, when I listen to that piece, it's like all I hear sometimes is struggle. Like, it's like I'm hearing myself fail to accomplish a task that I tried to do, which like is funny because that's the one of many points. But there's part of me, like the conservatory part of me, that's like, when a polyrhythm is executed in a way that's not exact, I get like anxious and stressed. So, but it's also fun because the duration of this piece is long enough for that feeling for me to pass. And then I just think about like each one of the instruments that I'm hitting. And then it comes back, and then it's a really personal experience for me in a way that a lot of music that we play, Travis, is less so maybe.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, this is like listening to me like try to do a thing, and like I can't extract myself and like listen to the music in its pure musical form in the same way. But
yeah, I remember when Andy came to my house to record the third track, and Andy was having an existential crisis about accuracy. And I remember I kept trying to say to you, like, Andy, it's impossible, literally impossible. Like, you can't do it right. And we were just going back and forth for probably 15 minutes. And then echoing from the next room, I just heard my partner go, Andy, it's not about accuracy.
It was stressful. But I mean,
it's by design, because I wanted to write you a virtuosic piece because you're really good at, you're a virtuoso for sure, and a really talented percussionist. But I also wanted to like subvert that as well. So And I mean, just in general, the idea of impossibility is something that comes up lots of times in music that I've made.
Well, it's interesting too. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Travis.
No,
Go.
no, I had a drummer anecdote that I wanted to share with you, which was like a really a primary component in my enjoyment of the third track, Kisses, in particular. So I have to funnel all of everything that I listen to, like it has to be funneled through a Slipknot filter, because that was the music that was so important to me, you know, when I really needed it. And there's this story about like the record's Iowa, which was recorded in 2001 at Sound City in Van Nuys in LA, where the producer, Ross Robinson, who was just like kind of a known, you know, terrorist, like in those recording sessions, during the song Iowa, came out and threw a flower pot at Joey Jordison, the drummer, while he was recording that song, just to do something to me which seemed similar to what I heard Andy do. It was like, you know, you're trying to drum, but like somebody's like throwing stuff at you, or there are things being thrown. And I used to rewind to that part in the song to try and figure out the exact moment where the flower pot passed his head. And I was like way into it. And then like when I listened to Andy do this piece, it's like, oh my God, I got 16 minutes of that magical moment in a row. So, I'm constant, and I've been fortunate enough to see Andy perform that in Columbia, South Carolina, and I kind of came into it fresh. I hadn't seen the score. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about the piece, and I came in cold, and I was just totally blown away. It was like, you know, again, another like 16, 17-minute performance that felt like 30 seconds, because I was riveted and like, what's he doing? What's he throwing? Where's the bucket? And it totally worked for me as a recording too, as much as I enjoyed the performance, which to me was the highlight of the record. But
thanks, man. There's also something vaguely Zhevsky-esque about that flower pot Joey Jordison anecdote.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get into that later. We had a very, very beautifully phrased question that Courtney brought my attention to from Ricky. And I'm going to hit the Q&A button, and then I'm going to hit the answer live button. It says, you would like to answer this question live. And, you know, forgive me.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Ricky says, in track 1, this is crazy. I thought I heard combination difference tones during the beginning. Was that intentional? Also, when Andy came in with the sharp percussive transients, my eyes were involuntarily blinking in response. Is that some kind of known psychoacoustic phenomena?
That is a great question. I will say I've been working with the vibraphone really closely for a long time, like around 10 years. And one of the things that I found the vibraphone is very good at is producing combination difference tones. And also, you don't get this on a recording, but the way that the vibraphone behaves in space, like when you hear it live, is also very bizarre. And so in the case of difference tones, I can like identify what's causing that like very specifically. But a lot of the other acoustic things that happen with that instrument are really mysterious to me. Like I hear them and I can repeat them, but I don't scientifically quite understand what's happening, and which is one of the reasons that I like the vibraphone so much. As for the involuntary blinking, it definitely was not something that I planned, but I will say one of the core ideas that made me write that third track, the long one, is that I really wanted to make a piece of music that you could feel, physically feel. I mean, not like touch physically, but that you could feel the sound in your body. And the way that it's mixed, I just listened on headphones for the first time since we made it, really. And like the way that the kick drum and snare drum are mixed, it was done really specifically to like feel like, not that you're being bludgeoned. It's not I didn't mean for it to be unpleasant, but that something really like physical is happening to you. And I really hadn't thought about that percussive sound in the first track, but I'm satisfied to hear it, and definitely like was in there somewhere. I put that in there because I wanted something that disturbed the kind of serenity of it all.
And what is a difference tone?
A difference tone is, particularly if you are using high pitches, like, let's say, well, I'm not going to explain this super well, but if you have two frequencies that are somewhat close together, played very high, you will hear a third tone that is the mathematical difference in hertz between those two high notes. And so it's a psychoacoustic phenomenon where you hear a third note that's not actually being played. And you don't usually hear those in headphones. And when I was listening to the first track, I heard this low, like kind of tambura, like low drone that was not intentional, that I've never heard before. So that was really interesting to me.
Yeah, that part of the phenomenon was really interesting to me too. And I love that, you know, the difference between listening to music on headphones versus listening in a room came up, because, you know, your room is an instrument. It's, for me, it feels like being inside of an acoustic guitar. Like, this room is as much of an instrument as anything I've ever, played in my life. And the first track, Crazy, like, did send me frequency hunting in my room, where I was going around my room, like, just trying to see, like, is there like a place like where this feels like it has a louder amplitude to me? Like, do I go to the corner where like the bass is like trapped to like get more of this effect, which I kind of read in a program note. If this is, I guess, what you called accentuated frequency, was it mixed in that way, where you found like that resonant frequency and then turned it up, or is this
no, I didn't do that. I mean, I have done that before, but mostly I don't want to mess with the vibraphone, because I feel like any manipulation takes away its magic.
Yeah.
It's happened to me so many times that I've played a show on vibraphone and somebody comes up to me and is like, "Where are your microphones?" And like it didn't occur to them that it's acoustic music. And so I think by manipulating it in the mixing process, if I did that, then the weird things that you're hearing that don't make sense could be explained away, like, oh, well, she mixed it that way.
Which was so interesting to me, because I was certain that it had been touched. Like, I had wondered, but I wasn't certain that it was a completely flat response that you were capturing, which seems like to be a really important thing, where instead of being like some sort of trickery where, like I just like kind of boosted like this frequency in my recording, it's something that you took a snapshot of, like as if you were using a camera instead of like, an EQ plugin.
I frankly cannot remember what I did at this point. It's been so long, but I might have adjusted frequencies just to make the chord really even, but I don't think that I did that.
On this one, actually, I don't think is touched.
Okay, I didn't think so, because I remember not having to do very much with the other three shorter pieces.
Yeah, no, I think this one was like almost entirely, if not 100%, like just acoustic capture, which I remember like changed everything about how I approach that instrument. Like playing that piece just like in, the room at your house, like everything that I had kind of taken for granted in the vibraphone, which, from a percussive standpoint, so much of what I was sort of like taught in the way I approached it was just like, I hit a thing in time. Like, I don't really pay attention to what the instrument is, what the thing is that I'm hitting. I just kind of hit these notes and with a certain kind of accuracy and velocity. But like that piece where I'm playing one thing over and over and over, the first and last tracks, like when you do it for a long time and don't really change the velocity or the place that you're hitting, the instrument creates all of these sounds on its own. And it's a parameter that like felt unlocked to me as a performer, which was really exciting and kind of scary, of just like, oh, like I can need to think more about the things that I'm hitting in general, because they all do that on some level.
Right.
And I found this to be really important to me to understanding like the program of the record, but then also like the form of the record itself. Where I saw a lot of Crazy when we made it to Rain in the fourth track, that I was like really focusing like on frequencies or the acoustic phenomena that was captured on both of those tracks. But then also I was wondering, like, the importance of the finger cymbals, because that sound, you know, kind of tied me to the next track. So like Crazy, once it was over, like had me thinking about Rain, the last track. But while I was listening to Crazy, I was also thinking about Take You, and I was like, is that a reference? Is that a reference to Take Me With You? You know, the finger cymbal sound that happens after that. That tom, you know, that kind of famous tom thing that Bobby Z or Prince played. Was that intentional?
Uh,
How much of a Prince nod is in all of these tracks?
in short, yes. I like the way that this started. I didn't set out to make a Prince album. I had just had this idea about the piece Kisses, that one night I was driving around and the song Kiss came on the radio, and I had it up like kind of loud. I like that song. And I was like, God, I can really like feel this kick and snare in my chest. And it's just amazing. And like, it's such a weird song, but it's such a great pop song at the same time. And I just was really, really struck by the timbre and the physicality of the drum machine on Kiss. And so I at some point, I think when Andy asked me to make the piece, I was like, oh, well, I want to do that. I want to make a piece you can feel. And then originally that piece was going to be one track on an Andy solo album of music by other composers. And then while Andy was at my house, we were like, you know what? This should just be an album. Like we should just, and we made 3 more pieces at my house that day. Well, I think one of them, the second track, happened in editing later, but the first and last tracks were recorded at my house that same day. And I will say I'm not like a Prince super fan. I like him a lot, but I'm not like an obsessive Prince fan. But I just keep hearing these little details in his music, that the finger cymbals. I first heard it in Raspberry Beret, and then I noticed that it was in Take Me With You too.
Yeah.
That there's a performed finger cymbal part. It's not a sample. Like somebody is playing that, and I'm like, not just in Prince, but I'm like obsessed with these little human details in like huge radio hits, because you know top 40 radio is made to be perfect. It's like, I remember somebody said, I forget who, somebody said about ABBA, that you just cannot imagine like ABBA. Oh, I think it was Stephen Merritt actually from the Magnetic Fields, that he was like, you cannot imagine ABBA in a studio making Dancing Queen. It just, it does not sound like human. It's so perfect. And I keep noticing these little auxiliary percussion parts of like shakers or finger cymbals, like things that just have this like just slight lack of precision, that to me are like, I don't know why I'm fixated on this. It's just something that I noticed. And so I just wanted to use that finger cymbal sound in the recording.
Yeah.
And you know, I like putting things into pieces that kind of disrupt whatever is happening to you.
Yeah, and I was just, I mean, I love the way that Prince made records. He had a very, during, you know, like these first couple of records that, like, I'm assuming some of these are referential to, he had a very famous engineer named Susan Rogers, who was basically on call 24 hours a day to show up when Prince was feeling creative. And then she had to endure this torture of just like kind of showing up and hitting like record whenever he wanted to do it. And Prince also famously, you know, recorded most of, you know, most of the parts on a lot of those songs. Yeah. And the drum sound that he popularized was this doubling where either like either he or Bobby Z would like be playing on top of like a popular drum module at the time called the Lindrum. So there'd be this electronic Lindrum playing, and then there'd be like a human doubling it, which was really like kind of unique and stable and like had a this instantly recognizable sound to me. And it's really cool from where I was to just like compare my memories of those records and how I pictured them happening in the studio, like, you know, the ABBA comparison with picturing you and Andy You know, like trying to do this in what felt to me much more like an organic and human way. So like I really liked the funhouse mirror effect of that, where it was like this very like humanly distorted version of, you know, songs I'd heard 1,000 times. Like I pictured, you know, this part in Crazy, the repeated, you know, vibraphone part that we were talking about and what Ricky was talking about. I'm like, oh, is that like this like kind of oscillated synth organ thing they did? Is that what that, I mean, like, is that the joke? Is that like the, is that?
Well, it's not a joke, but
Well,
yes.
I know, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I was a kid, I was just obsessed with that song.
Yeah.
No, we're talking like 5 years old, and I can still, I don't remember that much about being 5 years old, but I remember listening to that song just like all the time. And I can't say that I was thinking about that specifically when I decided to use the opening "Let's Go Crazy" chord, but
Yeah.
you know, it had to have been in my head somewhere that like I was so drawn to music from such a like insanely young age, and I just vividly remember being so into that song in like kindergarten. Um, so you know, and also just like what an iconic opening of a song.
Yeah.
So why not do it for 10 minutes or whatever it is?
Yeah. Again, I was happy to have that. I was happy to have like that, you know, that phenomenon or that experience elongated.
Yeah.
Which was pretty much the record for me. Like there were very precious moments that I got to have a lot of, and I was grateful for. I have only asked like 25% of my questions, so I want to encourage anybody that's still here to like please like put something into the Q&A before I steamroll this whole thing.
I like your
Yeah,
questions.
I'm interested to hear more from Andy too, because you know it's been a couple of years since we made this, so you know I don't know how you feel anymore.
I can expound on that, unless Travis, if you have any me specific questions, either way.
Well, I mean, not so much like on this one. I mean, on some of the other ones, like I was curious about like the way that Take You was written and the way that things line up and you know how much doubling there is, but then what the, you know, what you, Sarah, were really trying to get out of that experiment.
Well, oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Well, that's like the most stressful one for me to listen to. In a really cool way, but like for a lot of reasons, like I think the most interesting thing for me is listening to all that silence.
Yeah.
Like listening to Unmeasured Silence through headphones is a really fascinating experience.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean it's really, it's unique. Like I was like, as I'm like listening to the piece, I was like trying to think of another time where, because you know, if you're watching a performance of a piece like that, you can sort of like, people are carrying the tension in different places physically.
Yeah.
But when it's a recorded like work, you're just like in silence, and it's like kind of like in your own head, and it's really wild. But and it's also another one where like I think hearing things that are almost lined up but not quite, like this is one that was, I think one of the interesting things about this experience, the record as an experience for me, is like some of it, like Kisses is a very live experience. And to some extent, like both vibraphone pieces are too. But this one, I can't imagine happening live. It's like I played that fill a couple times, and then Sarah went to town and created, like, lined it all up and made it wasn't performed. I performed that fill like a couple times.
Yeah, and there was a moment in the middle of it where I noticed that it did seem very unison. And I didn't know if it was like you know, sometimes like when you're editing things together, you know, just like kind of put things in certain places and then it's just incidental, like when it lines up and it's like a happy mistake that you captured. And I didn't know if that was more what was happening on Take You or if that was like very meticulous, like a composition thing.
No, it was totally constructed in the studio by chance.
Okay, good. Yeah, I
where
like those.
it was, I forget how many tracks now, but I think I want to say 4 or maybe 6 tracks of that same fill, and I just gently nudged each one of them in either direction.
Yeah.
Um, and I did that in a different way for every instance of the fill, and then whatever I got is what I got. So it was a nice little like magical moment that there was almost a unison.
Well, so like it's interesting when I play Kisses live. Like the very important part of it, or like the very visual part, is that like I'm literally taking things and throwing them into a bucket on stage, like a very loud metal bucket. And because it's so long, like by around like minute 5 or so, people get like in the audience get like real invested in whether or not the thing's gonna land in the bucket. And then so like people like by like near the end of the piece, it'll be like yay when like it like lands in the thing, which is an amazing phenomenon because like I think when I've talked to people after that, it's like you'll get like real invested, and then like it'll happen and you'll be like yay, and then you'll zoom out like why is this the thing I'm rooting for? Like what made me root for this this shoe to go in this bucket? Like why like what happened to me like to root for this and be so invested in this action? And I had that experience listening to Take You. Like when the drums kind of lined up, I was like, yay. And then I was like, wait, like why? Like that was the thing I was like waiting for the whole time. And then it happened, and then I was like, yay. And then I was like, wait, like what made me want that and why and how? So,
Right.
And I love to investigate that too. It's like, once you determine that when you're listening that either something is happening that you wanted or something is not happening that you wanted, it's a great thing to evaluate, like why you demand that, and if you actually need it. I think that having those conversations like with yourself, like as you're listening in an audience, like or at home, are the most magical moments in being a listener. But
one of my well, so real just on that, super quick.
Yeah.
Like I think one of the there's a lot of things that like Sarah, your music, like I love for so many reasons. And one of them is the very specific ways it plays with tension and release. Like it generates it from so many different directions in so many ways I wouldn't expect as both a listener and a performer. And then like when it gives you the thing you kind of want sometimes, it's like, wait, I like, it makes me think about like everything I want. Like why those things are present. So it was, yeah.
I had one question because I know we come back to the third track, the longest one, Kisses, a lot, and this is the piece where Andy's playing a series of polyrhythms, and as he was describing, trying to toss objects into a bucket that's placed at different distances in front of the drum kit while he's trying to do something impossible, as Sarah said. Which is the one that I saw in South Carolina, where it was this like Andy drumming and then also trying to do something else on. It was like trying to juggle and drive or something. I wanted to know, was that one take when you went over to Sarah's and recorded it?
No.
There are 4 sections, and each one of those 4 sections was one take.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And
well, because we had to move the microphone with the bucket.
Yeah. And those were my favorite moments too in that particular movement, was like the way that, like, I love the way that the kick and the snare sounded, and I was wondering like if the snare itself was a reference to that like weird white noise Lindrum snare in the song anyway. That like kind of blend. It sounded like Andy was playing like a blended low snare with a tambourine.
There's a very funny story about that, actually, that we started recording and Andy was using my snare drum, which is just like a standard, 5-inch deep Ludwig snare drum.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really want like a fatter snare drum sound. And my friend Brian, who I've moved since then, but my neighbor Brian is a really great drummer. And I texted him and I was like, can we come over and borrow a snare drum? Because I knew he had a lot of gear. And, he's like a really cool guy. He wears like tinted sunglasses and calls people daddy-o, and is just like a really like genuinely cool guy.
Yeah.
And we were in his studio and he was sitting in his drum set, and I was like, yeah, do you have a snare that, like like just a big fat snare drum sound. And he reached behind him and he goes, "Oh, have you tried the big fat snare?" And pulls out this disc,
Yeah.
literally this product called Big Fat, that's what it's called, right, Andy? Yeah, this product called Big Fat Snare that is a white disc with little tambourine jingles on it. And we went home and did that, and it sounded like a big fat snare. But I couldn't believe it. I've never been in the situation of like someone just effortlessly from behind their back being like, "Oh, here's the perfect thing that you need."
Here's the words you just said.
Yeah, that's, I mean, wow. But I was really shocked, you know, at the way that it seemed to like acoustically reproduce like that sound. I mean, it was reminiscent to me like of Kiss.
Yeah.
Of the song Kiss, like when I heard it, and I was, I don't know, I was really curious about what was happening in the room, because a lot of it I could picture, and then parts of it I couldn't, and then which made me wonder if it was a complete performance or if it was sectional.
It essentially was a complete performance. It's just for editing purposes, and like Andy said, because we had to move the bucket around. It was done in sections, but essentially it's like a live recording.
Yeah, and it feels that way, and it's really exciting for that reason. I think I'd known the left foot is supposed to play like a pan.
So it became a cowbell. Like that was originally a pan, but it became a cowbell pretty early on. And that's the part, like listening to that cowbell over and over, like,
yeah,
like everything I knew about cowbells has changed since then.
Because like every one of your appendages, and also there's a question about if there's a video of this.
No, but there should be.
But there's every one of your four appendages is playing a different instrument, right?
Yeah, like the right hand is playing a wood block or like a jam block. The left hand is playing the snare. The right foot is playing the kick drum, and then the left foot is playing a cowbell. But the cowbell like gets a little bit bent over the course of the piece. So like when the metal gets bent, it starts going boing, boing.
Okay, so speaking of hearing a third note, at about 5 minutes in that piece, like I heard, it sounded like a salad bowl. Because like, you know, after the impact of the beater or whatever was hitting the metal, and you know, it'd spring up like as the metal would pop back out, as if it had gone like, you know, from being concave like back to level. So that was a cowbell.
Yeah, it was a cowbell. And also like, well, so one of the products that I hate more than most products is like the cowbell pedal mount, because it never works. It always like the cowbell will slowly tilt, and you have to like real quickly, like frantically put it back on. Like it doesn't, it mutes it. It like does really weird things to this instrument. And so like there's a lot of sound of like the pedal hitting this kind of defective product.
I see.
It's really cool. And I got really into.
One moment. Makila has her hand up.
Yeah.
Hi, Makila.
Hi.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize my hand was up.
Oh, yay!
just talking about that Kisses piece though, I have had the pleasure of seeing that live, and the anxiety that one gets while watching that is very real. Just thought I would share that. You go quickly from being impressed by everything that Andy is doing on the stage to being, as you said, very invested in if you're going to make it into the bucket, and every time you get up to move the bucket, there's a sense of dread of, oh no, why are you doing this? Please stop. When is this going to end? And I enjoyed hearing the piece again without seeing it. I actually got a chance to focus more on the music versus just it was almost sensory overload in terms of willing you to make each piece into the bucket every time it got further away.
Yeah, the bucket gets further over the course of the piece. It gets very far by the end. So it's another thing that's difficult to do.
Until the bucket comes back. I remember seeing it live where the bucket that's moving further away for the hoop shooting, like Andy goes out and brings the bucket like right in front of the kick, and then puts the bucket right in front of the kick or very close to the front of the kick. And I was like, what's she gonna do with that bucket so close? I don't ever know if I got a satisfactory answer, but like I was riveted, and it was really cool because like I was in a room with all, collegiate level drummers who were also riveted by it too. So my viewing experience was just like with, people that knew exactly, the challenge that Andy was undertaking, and I think we're really feeling for him and rooting for him. And I'm also shocked that like when you have to do things like that, how much it resembles a much more irrational meter than what you're trying to play.
Totally. Like if you were to like reverse engineer the notation of that piece, it would look bonkers. Like it already looks kind of bonkers just from the start. But if you were to like go back and then with like digitally notate what happened, it would be so like irrational in so many ways, like so nested.
Yeah.
But
well, we're getting real close to the end. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add or say to Sarah and Andy? Cool.
Y'all, thank you so much. This has been so lovely. Sarah, thank you for like the pieces and taking the time. And it very much like playing this whole, like it changed how I kind of approach like the discipline, which was really, really, really cool.
Great, thanks.
And I dropped the link back to the Bandcamp to get the recording. And then also, Andy, you and I and Courtney just started doing a little bit of communications this week about doing more of these, and we're offering like a subscription now to our digital season where we're going to be doing an album listening party and an EP listening party every month. So if you're interested in doing more of this and hearing more crazy, awesome stuff, please go to thelivingearthshow.com/donate and we'll do this on the reg. Yes, you in the front row, Sarah.
I would like to close. Are we done?
Yeah.
I would like to close with reading some song lyrics. If anyone knows the artist Smog, also known as Bill Callahan.
Oh yeah.
Many, many years ago, he wrote a song called Prince Alone in the Studio. And I'm actually not like a huge Smog Bill Callahan fan, but this song has stayed with me for a long time. And I thought I would read the lyrics really quick that go. Prince alone in the studio. It's 2 a.m. and all the girls are gone. The girls thought they were going to be able to have sex with him. They wore their special underwear they wore their special underwear. Once the tracks were laid down, Prince's back turned around, raspberry headphones on his head, on his ears. Prince alone in the studio. It's 3 a.m. Prince hasn't eaten in 18 hours. Dinner's burned on the stove, but Prince, he doesn't even know. Prince alone in the studio. It's 4 a.m. and he finally gets that guitar track right. And it's better than anything any girl could ever give him because Prince is alone. Prince is alone. Oh, Prince, you are so alone. And when it's all complete, he feels like a hunter on the street.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Bill Callahan wrote that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very old Bill Callahan song.
The same one that like Andy and I listened to Dream River a lot. We like that record.
I like that one, but
yeah, this is a real old one called Wild Love.
I like that one better.
But it's funny, I wasn't thinking about that song when I made this album, and I went back and looked at it, and I was like, oh, this record is totally about loneliness. So I wanted to read it because I looked it up before this talk started, and it's just nice.
I think it's a beautiful one to go out on.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep. So long.
Bye.